Going live. Here we are. Awesome. What's up, killers? Good to see everybody today.
Good morning.
Derek, here comes Neil back
Hey, guys.
in, sorting out his various issues. Let's see. There you go. Cool.
Yo.
Got you now.
I wish everyone could see the pre-show shenanigans that we just endured.
Yeah. Let's see. We got some comments already. Who is that account that started using lots of DC a few days ago? I don't know. Joe, you want to take that one?
We know who it is. They're doing a bunch of pressure testing.
Okay.
That's probably about the most I'll say, just because the process is a little weird right now. You kind of have to go through Foundation to get an OUI. So as a subsequent, we tend to know who these folks are, and I don't think it's our place to say who they are or call anyone out.
Okay.
But yeah, we woke up and saw a lot of traffic, and we hit them up and said, "Hey, is this intentional? Is everything good?" And yeah, it seems like they know what they're doing.
Okay. All right. Cool.
That's cool.
Whoever it was that did the stupid little $6 thievery hack on the meatspace console used their credit card. So I've got their name, I've got their stupid card number, and their address. I just thought it was funny because it was $6, so it's like, there's no need to pay anyone any visits. But it's just a weird thing, like,
Yeah.
And maybe I pay the wrong person to visit if I go to that credit card. It's a stolen credit card they picked up off the street. But all right, we got a boatload of fucking info to talk about today. We're got a boatload of topics. It is not gone unnoticed that one of us is wearing the hat of a competitor.
Well, I mean, you guys know I just moved to a new place, and my girlfriend bought this nice rug, and it came with this hat.
Nice. Well played, sir. Well played. Okay, so we got the Deutsche Telekom IoT stuff. That was the news that came out on Twitter this week. I saw that. Pretty big deal. Anyone want to take that and explain it to folks who don't understand that?
Well, I mean, I'll take a stab. It's something that I had the pleasure of sort of being a part of and working with that team to get that on board. I should sort of preface this by saying there were a lot of people that sort of made this a success, whether it was across Nova or the Deutsche Telekom team or Foundation. This is like engineering, biz dev, marketing, like all of it, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah, the really cool thing here is this. This is not a small integration. They are directly using an OUI on the Helium network. And on Helium's net ID, like this isn't them doing a small roaming thing. Like they've fully gone in.
Oh, they're on 3C.
Yep. Yeah, they were I think they actually tailed you. You've got the first dev adder allocation. I think they've got the second.
Hell yeah! Love to be a fucking winner. Follow in my wake, Germans.
Yep, literally. So we tested on you. You guinea pigged it for us. You and Paul.
Yeah, Paul the Crusher.
So yeah, it's a full on LNS, and they have built this into their IoT creators platform. So anyone who's sort of working in IoT and is probably in this sort of domain of NB-IoT, which is sort of what that platform served before, can now jump in and leverage LoRaWAN. So
cool.
This is a really good introduction for folks that LoRaWAN might have not been on their radar. Obviously, everyone in this room kind of knows the benefits of LoRaWAN versus other protocols, like you're not chasing SIM cards, all that fun stuff. And in fact, like if you go sign up on IoT creators, like part of the step is for them to send you a SIM card, and like you don't have to do that with LoRaWAN. It's all those keys. So
yeah, I saw their four easy steps. It's like it doesn't look that easy, but they're competitors, so I got to talk a little shit about them. But I'm happy to see people on there and crush.
Well, and they're a competitor, but they're also as an element of being tied to a big telco, like they're going to be big clients. Like that's their bread and butter. They're I think launched.
They're not going after my
customers.
Local power.
Sure. Yeah, maybe like that's a little bit of the design of the platform, but this is a rising tides element for the LoRaWAN network. Like we want to see more of this stuff everywhere. And it's going to raise that visibility. You talk to most people about IoT, like LoRaWAN is the last thing on their mind.
Yep.
And so we're starting to see that narrative change, and these types of partnerships are a really big part of that. And that's all backed by the network we've built, this macro layer for LoRaWAN where anyone can plug into it. So.
Yeah. Love it. Let's see. Daniel, Hotspotty is off Mapbox. You got your Solana hat on. I hope that's supposed to be public. If not, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, like me and Neil were discussing on Discord before. One of the biggest costs for, I guess, like us and a lot of the deeping projects is the mapping, right? Because deeping is very highly integrated with like a location and how we're going to show that. Mapbox, a great tool. They have a lot of really easy to use software, but it's extremely expensive, especially for small teams like us. And it's actually a bigger leap than we expected to get away from Mapbox, because everything that Hotspotty built was very integrated with their SDKs, etc. But we're very happy in a way with like the market's a bit smaller now. We need to cut costs because things are at tough times. So then we decided, okay, let's finally do this move that we've been talking about a long time ago to actually. We set up our own infrastructure for that, and then that's going to be like we have more control. It's going to be much cheaper, so we're very excited about. We wanted to deploy this before the show, but I think the team is deploying it right now, so in a few hours should be fully transitioned. But another thing to know is that it's not going to be any different for anyone else than our credit card and our bank account. So that's another cool thing. We
save you guys money. It'll keep you around longer
as possible.
Yeah,
exactly. Important. So that was the goal.
Yeah. Daniel, maybe you should explain a little bit just about how billing happened in the Mapbox world, because it was actually a little bit of a wild insight for me.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, you get every time you access the Helium Explorer or Hotspotty and you see the map. Each time you access the website, you get charged for like someone has to pay for that data to be used, right? So when Helium was very like let's say end of 2021, that was a lot of people accessing the Explorer all the time. Hotspot were paying. I can't even imagine how much the Helium Explorer was paying at that time as well. So even now, it's very expensive. Yeah. So finally got some bandwidth after the Solana migration to go over it and actually remove that expense from the bill of materials that we're paying every month. But yeah, it's quite high. Mapping is much more expensive than you can imagine. Every time we do anything on Hotspotty or the Helium Explorer, or I think any other deeping project, like searching for an address, everything related to locations, mapping, everything is very expensive. I think Neil also can say tell something about that, because your products are also very integrated with mapping, right?
Yeah, the reverse geocode lookup for latitude and longitude, that costs us every lookup. Every time you load the map, there is a cost for that. I mean, for us, it's a little different because it's in our business model for every load, but if you're just providing a public interface website that anyone can go on and view, that's costing you money every single time it hits it. It's just incredible. And we use like their routing network as well. So there's like free costs to every time an uplink happens.
Come on, I thought this thing was free for everybody, right? You guys are just raking in money on this IoT stuff. Let's see. Okay, I'm seeing a couple folks who are watching this are, what's up, Nikki? In the videos that Max and I shot over at Deep in State the other day, so the mobile working group, this is the Helium-related news. It's not stuff that we usually pay attention to, but there is this thing called Mobile on Helium. So we might as well hit this, is that Helium Foundation is standing up all these different working groups to manage what's going on inside all the little kind of sub pieces to it. And one of them is the mobile working group. The first time that the groups went up for vote, I know that for me, I feel like I'm pretty connected. There's plenty of names I didn't recognize. And so I kind of picked the 3 or 4 names I did recognize, put them at the top, and then stacked everyone else under them, which is a terrible way to vote. But if I did, I'm sure a bunch of other people did it as well. And so this time, Max and I wanted to say, hey, we want to give people a chance to introduce themselves so that you see who you're voting for and what they might be standing for a little bit. So we ran, like 2-3 minute interviews for each person. Every candidate had the opportunity to be on there. Not all candidates took it. I know a couple of them who are in the chat took it, and I appreciate them taking their time. But you can check that out over on the Deep in State, and then there's a link, should be a link in the description to that. So that was kind of a cool thing to do. So we have representing Gateholder. I know I saw you on there. Yeah. All right, so that's that news. Let's see. Paul moved his mapper fleet. This Neil, you talked about this to Chirpstack in a live migration. Apparently, that's a big deal.
Yeah, he was on over on his Twitter. He was showing off that he live migrated everyone from his legacy console to the live Chirpstack one. So that was something like 4,000 devices, I think it was 4,000 plus devices. Just clicked a button. You know, that's no big deal. But
Just
the code behind it that must have been, you know, so
it's
intense. Right?
not like there were 4 months of development behind that button. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Just
Yeah,
put,
it's like
there you go. It's done.
10-year overnight.
That's all
a lot of
Paul,
work
by
to
the
make
way.
it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One guy soldering on doing all this Chirpstack work is incredible. You know, everything he does is so integral to the functionality of the Chirpstack going live. Like,
Yeah.
there's this
Helium
whole
Foundation
piece
needs to put a
about
security team on that guy.
there's all this information about, like, if you use any of the metadata from the hotspots, you won't be able to get location on Chirpstack anymore. So he's writing a system to integrate the locations, looking up Solana. You know, so hell of a lot of code just to get where we were almost. But then once the functionality, you can go so much further. You know.
Yeah. Yep. And I see people, we'll talk a little bit about some of the console issues later, but I saw people like, didn't he get a grant for that? Like, my guess is if you add up the money that he got from Helium Foundation grants and the work he put in, it's probably like a 90-10 split as far as he put in an awful lot of work and got paid for a little bit of it. And I think that's how grants are supposed to be for. Like, they're supposed to give you a push in the right direction and be a little bit of support, but they're not this thing where it's like, hey, we're going to totally fund your dream for as long as you want to, and you can do whatever you want. So
It's not a salary, right? Yeah.
No. Let's see. The next one I've got is this S3 versus AWS. It's a little bit geeky. This was kind of the convo that we were all having before this, but I wanted to hit it just so that people saw a little bit of the costs and understood some of the complexities behind the tools that you guys are building, as well as other folks in Helium, and the amount of data they've got to use. So there's kind of the storage cost. There's getting the data in and out of a system cost. There is how fast you want that. There's how long you want it stored. Let's see.
Yeah.
Daniel, do you want to take that a little bit and talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. I don't want to
Sure.
get too, because this can be like a talk that lasts days, right? Between
Yeah, I
the
can cut you
DevOps
off in like
people.
30 seconds if you want.
Yeah, no, it's basically like, especially being a bootstrap company, that we've been serving a lot of data, like a lot of data. People have no idea how much in the past 2 years. We always need to be very careful on how we store, how we manage our data. And yeah, that was part of the Mapbox conversation that we started before, that we as Hotspotty don't use services like AWS for almost anything. Otherwise, we just kill our budget for just working with the data. And things that like the Nova team stores all the data on S3 just mainly because the convenience. They don't really worry so much about the pricing as other people, because deep pockets. There was an idea before that they could move the hotspot data outside of S3 to some other place that are cheaper, but that didn't really happen. So that actually creates an extra complexity, or in terms of financial complexity, for people trying to build on top of the network. So let's hope that they change that. It's not really bad now. Like we built a whole system that for us at least is not very costly, but for people who are starting and just want to play around with the data and they need to put like hundreds of dollars just to access the data, it's not very convenient.
Nice. I'm seeing
That's
Joey
my-
do some product placement with with your drink can. What you drinking there, Joey?
Cheap brand. I can't afford LaCroix.
Bear market.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have to send up some Gristle King spritzer water, whatever the fuck it is, for you.
Oh boy. All right. Come
Let's
find
see.
that.
And Hack is saying S3 is not cheap. If I'm understanding the conversation between Daniel, you, and Neil and Joey, actually S3 was one of the cheaper options. So,
It
Yeah,
kind of depends on what you're doing with it.
okay.
Go for it. Neil.
Yes, exactly.
No, I was going to say it depends on how you use these services. I mean, some things that you just have to have bare metal for, but if you have control of a system and building it from the ground up, like I have, we work with Amazon in a way that we're only billed for the amount of time that the function is running for. We're only billed for the amount of time that you retrieve a single line of data. But there is like base costs that just make it expensive. Like The big one is always database costs. You have to have databases in a cluster with failovers for redundancy, and it triples or quadruples the cost, and it's just a really expensive thing to run. And it doesn't scale. You need enough storage to last for everyone, and you can't scale that down based on load. Whereas the functions, they just run in the cloud, like whenever it will scale to a million requests at once or just one.
Yeah.
So if you have this constant database, it's quite a lot of cost. So we're exploring it in that respect. S3 is really cheap as an alternative to that. That's what the Helium chain does with witness reports. It writes them all to S3 objects rather than us needing to run bare metal ETL servers. So if we can do the same thing for our data, we can lower our costs to levels that mean it works at volumes for millions and millions of devices. So it's like it's good, but there's ways to improve it for us.
It's not about trade-offs, right? Yeah, no, exactly. I never want to say like AWS is a bad service. Depending on what you are doing, it can be the right solution or can be the wrong solution. Like, for example, running the old Helium ETL on AWS servers was a very, very stupid decision, because you're going to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars per month when you can have something that's much cheaper and much faster, right? So it's basically every tool has its own, like everything that you need to do has a different way you should approach that.
Right tool for the job. I like it. Let's see. Gateholder. Next big thing needs to be a DNS, decentralized network storage. I think we were talking about that, like the CDN idea, but that's down the pipe. We got to finish off mobile, get the Wi-Fi, and then maybe get to the next thing. So I think it's in the roadmap. But it's not happening on Tuesday. Let's see. Maker apps not up to snuff. I saw that Capcom himself was having problems with a 𝗶𝗶𝘁𝗀𝗲 getting on board. That was a public thing in the Helium Discord. I have not onboarded a hotspot recently, but I know actually there's someone in the chat who also had a problem with the Bobcat hotspots. It sounds like that's been sort of sorted out, but it's still kind of a problem. Iffy, Neil? Because you actually, Neil, you had a client try that, right?
Yeah, we had a client ask us to trial some sensors, and obviously he went out and bought Gateway. It took 2 weeks for us to get it working. Eventually, the problem was found that it was the onboarding server, and there was issues. But the experience overall is just terrible. Because they have to ask the wallet to swap the HNT for DC for like location onboards and stuff. And then sometimes there was a bug as well where like you had to have one DC in there for it to work. And things like that are just these unexpected things that just meant onboarding hotspots and a certain location, and a lot of the time even get them to show up on Bluetooth is horrible. People just haven't got the time for it. It just doesn't work. And then you've got SenseCap folks using 𝗪𝗔's app, or Bobbers using 𝗪𝗔's app, or you've got to do this bit on that one and that one on this one, like to get it all to work. It's just a bit of a mess at the moment. Yeah.
Lick your finger, stick it in your ear, turn around 3 times, turn a somersault, should work. Put fucking another dime in the slot. Okay, so just if you're having problems, or if you had problems, that's you're not the only one. Let's see. There's a Helium wallet hotspot rewards claim issue. I know that happened over the week. It looks like that was resolved. So not a ton of news there. Joey, any extra color on that?
Yeah, I saw that roll through, but I wasn't keeping close eyes on it.
Okay, same. It was just like, hey, someone else is fixing something I didn't have a problem with, but some other people did. Great.
I mean, just as a plug, it's one of the great things about seeing the foundation team grow and people sort of take ownership over stuff. It's like they're on it. It's great.
Yep. Daniel, I'm fucking embarrassed to not know this, but is Hotspotty doesn't allow you to onboard hotspots, right? Travis is asking, can we just use Hotspotty Connect? Yeah,
we do allow for Panther and Rec.
Okay.
We don't allow for the other ones, but for like a location insertion, we can do for any hotspot out there, because it's just like a Solana transaction. One thing that like we're finishing like the mapping thing, and next week we want to go back into improving the Hotspotty Connect app to actually tell people what the problem is, right? Because right now, if you try to do a location insertion, you don't have any FTC. So we want to go through like all the bugs that people are complaining. And a lot of the bugs that not necessarily a bug, something that like nowhere in the internet, nowhere before, like nowhere, it doesn't return any issue when you try to like assert a location. It doesn't have an error code or anything. It just doesn't happen. So we need to know, okay, the person needs to have like 500,000 DC to be able to onboard. Before it was like you just need agent T and then use the agent T to do that, right?
Yep.
So there's a lot of things that people just don't know. I mean, yesterday there was a guy on our Hotspotty Discord telling that his hotspot was broken because it wasn't mining agent T anymore. Just this random IoT token that he doesn't know what it is. So there's a lot of confusion still in that sense. Like I guess because Helium actually was built in a way that it's so easy that you just plug in and forget. But then there was like this massive change with the Solana, and the people just like, what's happened? What is this? So there's a lot. It's going to take a time, for people to really get up to speed and then actually figure out what's happening in their hotspot. So hopefully things are going to like equalize very soon.
To continue to clean it up. Let's see, Joey, you got this sensor in your attic thing? It sounds like a 80s album. Suburban Crypto's asking if you got a sensor working in your attic.
Oh yeah. Well, so I spotted them on Twitter. They threw a temperature humidity sensor up in their attic just to sort of track a bit of home health thing, and it's just not something that had crossed my mind. So yeah, I haven't done it yet. I'm going to be throwing one in there. I'm moving a bunch of stuff around right now. So
I've got the same sensor. It's an LHT65. In fact, I can look out my window and see it. It's got the same dangly sensor bit off of it. And I think I've been looking at that thing. It's been up. It was one of the very first sensors I ever bought in Helium. So it's been up for 2.5 years now. I think it's out of battery. And it's given me an excuse to go and buy one of those. Don't tell my wife Lee this. She's watching. She's like, no, we're not buying that thing. It's one of those little spot welders because that's how the battery is attached. It's like a K-weld spot welder. It's like, I don't see how I'm living without it at this point.
You can make one of those out of an old microwave, by the way.
I've seen that. I've also seen,
and she'll buy you the actual one.
Yeah, so. I've seen lots of warnings where it's like, yeah, you'll also very likely to kill yourself if you don't know what you're doing. So let's see, Derek, what does the Dragino sense? I think it's temperature and humidity, and it's got two different places on the sensor. So the sensor's a little box. It's got a little like cord on it, another sensor on the end of that. So in the Twitter picture that Suburban Crypto had posted, he'd had them both in the same place. And in the background, you could see like an exhaust fan, I think. And so the suggestion was, hey, move your sensor closer to the exhaust fan so that one of the sensors is kind of right on top of it. And one of them is a little bit further away. And then you can get two data points and see if the exhaust fan is working, et cetera, et cetera. Damn, Travis, you lost a friend that way. Fucking Travis. Travis knows a lot of people, a lot of stories. Let's see. Oh, I saw a couple of you say hit the like button. I should say hit the like and subscribe. Max has been making me do that over at Deep in State, and that seems to be working really well. But I can see we got 24 folks on here and 9 likes, 10 likes. So thank you guys for smashing that like button. We hit something just now that wasn't in our list to talk about, but it's this implicit burn thing. I want to say Nosmaster or 𝗱𝗲𝗀𝘀, one of the two instigators over on the console thing, brought that up. But it is a problem, if I'm getting it right, is that there's no way right now to trade HNT for DC for the average person. I think that's right. And then use the DC.
I mean, you can do that on the Black app, but it's not very straightforward or very like logical. People don't know, right?
Right. And I don't think for my use case, for Medio Scientific, I don't think I can burn my HNT to DC to use on the meatspace console to use on my OUI. I think I have to use a credit card through the Sphere integration to buy DC, which is fine with me because, like Neil, I don't really want to, give away any of my HNT. But the fact that you can't do it right now, I can see how that's frustrating people.
Sorry, I was slightly distracted. This is to fund an OUI?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can do that in the Helium wallet app. Yeah. So in the, your little token listing at the bottom, you'll have like a data credit balance.
Okay.
With your HNT and your mobile and whatever else, right? If you tap on the data credits, there'll be a window that pops up that gives like a delegate button. And then what you can do is you hit that, you would select the IoT network, and you would delegate to your payer key for your OUI.
Cool. So I can shift my DC.
So and you can actually, Sphere also integrated this UI in their platform. So if you choose to not use the the credit card, and instead do a DC burn, it's that same functionality, just on a web UI. So you can use like a wallet app or browser wallet.
Okay. And Liam's saying if it's go ahead, Neil.
Nosmaster's point is that he, as a non-LNS owner, can't burn HNT to DC.
Right.
Yeah,
He'd
and
have to enter
that's
into a
totally on
private
the
agreement.
operator. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'll check
what we
this
did
out.
support
Good.
on the note, an LNS like we made sure in the data credit delegation that it supports a memo. And so that means that your LNS operators, should they choose to operate on a like, sure, you can burn DC to us and then pay us some other rate.
Yep.
You can track that specific delegation using that memo, which is important. And that's how the old Helium console worked.
Okay. I'll mess around with this. Liam is saying if it's stuck in the wallet, it can't be used for data on the network. So I just want to make sure I understand it. Right now in the GK Black Helium wallet, I've got, I don't know how many data credits. You're saying that I can go over and basically delegate those data credits to the meatspace OUI. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so you can burn HNT to DC, and you would do that in any wallet. And then as long as you have signing authority for that wallet, you get one opportunity to delegate those tokens.
Okay.
And that's how you would put it into the OUI.
Got it. And then just to be super clear, because I see Mike Jeff is asking this. Let's see if I can add this in here. I believe the answer to this is yes. You could burn DC and then you could tell me like, hey, I burned DC to your wallet. And what I'll tell you is don't fucking do that, because I have an agreement with Paul that I can't sell you DC at anything less than 10x. So if you do that, just consider that you are contributing DC to the 𝗚𝗿𝗀𝘁𝗀𝗏 Scientific Galactic Enterprise, and you'll never get that back. I can't strike that deal with you. So while it's possible for me, and I'm not speaking for other LNS owners, please don't do that on my end, because you're putting both of us in a pickle. It's pickle I don't really give a fuck about, because you're giving me free money, but you're not going to be happy about that. Okay, so that's implicit burn, and I hope that answers your question, Mike Jeff. Thank you for asking it. We had the scheduled Oracle upgrade. That seems like that went off without a hitch. Let's see, Eric's question. Will we ever be able to send DC to other wallets, like selling a hotspot to a new owner? I don't know. Joey? Joey's busy. There's something happening at Foundation.
Yeah.
The console is being
yeah, so
hacked.
you can actually
Yeah.
you can set a recipient for a data credit transaction burn today. So like I was just double checking.
Oh, you're doing it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, sorry, bad reflections. I can see y'all.
Look at that handsome devil right there.
Yeah. So yeah, you would just slap the like add recipient part on that data credit burn, and it would send it to them instead.
Okay. Cool. Let's see. Next up, we got a new 1663 website. It's 1663.io. That's Nova's giant competitor. They're trying to stomp the life out of Medio Scientific. We will fight valiantly a guerrilla battle, which has always been my favorite. Now that they're like, go check them out if you're a giant business. I think they're doing good work, and they're obviously that's what Nova's thing is. So that was Neil's or one of Neil's many points just to talk about today. Anything else you want to put on top of that, Neil?
No, it's just good. They're defining some metrics that you can see over the site about different use cases like asset tracking, cold monitoring. I wonder where they got that from. Water monitoring, environmental monitoring. They just give a bit of detail about it, so it's nice to see an entity kind of putting that effort in.
Yeah, super cool. Let's see, Joey. I think you have to. You're being called into another corner because we're going to talk about something you can't talk about. So if you accidentally drop your earphones or have to go to the bathroom right now or get a drink of water, it's fine.
All right. Earmuffs
so
going on.
Yeah, Coinbase listed HNT this week. I know that was big news in the Twitter space. Lots of people are super excited about that. Max called me up. He was like, dude, HNT's going up. I was like, great. Fuck, I got another sensor I broke. I'm not as worried about HNT, but
My
that was a
life.
big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel,
I'm not sure
that
it's really...
What's that?
Go on.
No, go for it.
Oh, I wasn't sure it's fully integrated yet, right? It's more that they're going to do it.
Oh, I thought they were
listed.
listed.
Well,
No.
it wasn't. It was saying this asset's not manageable. I don't know if that was just the region I was in or something, but it's like more that they started to announce what they're doing in advance, just to be more open with it. So they've announced it on Twitter that they're gonna. That's what I saw anyway.
Cool. Thank you for the clarification.
Hopefully we don't need to wait until they leave the US, right, to have all this done.
Yeah.
They have the problem with the SEC.
God bless America. We
But,
get most things right, but not everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's very interesting to see that, because I remember back in the beginning when I started playing with Helium, there was already like code written to migrate Agent T, to accept Agent T into Coinbase. It's like they have their like own infrastructure that I don't know much about that, but you have to have some sort of compliances and some sort of things that you need in order to your token to be listed there. And I think that was done like 2 years ago. So we're like, okay, the code is there, so this is going to be at any time right now. And then that never actually happened until they finally announced. So that's pretty good. I think especially for the US, which is like Helium's the biggest country in the world is the US still. And now you have a little bit more places to actually deal with the token. So I'm very excited about that. Maybe I never had a problem because I'm not in the US, but it's still pretty good for the network.
Come to us. Yeah, that'd be cool. Let's see. I'm seeing in the chat, Jerome and Hack are talking about the same thing. I think this is important to hit. Jerome's talking about this delegate button under DC as an example of how the Black Wallet app has not been fully explained so that Joe Public can understand it. A learning video is needed. So Jerome, I mean, this is kind of the Gristle King business, is that I create learning videos to help people understand this, and then through all that public exposure like that helps me sell more stuff. So from my end, it's fine that Helium Foundation doesn't do any of this stuff. And I think from Helium Foundation, I can just say this, and then Joey, if you want to correct me, you can. But I think Helium Foundation's position is that, hey, we want the community to step up and take on a lot of these roles and do this stuff. And ultimately, Foundation wants to not have to exist. They want everything to be in code and that they get to kind of fade off and the network can fully run itself. Now, certainly that's not going to happen next Tuesday, but I think that's kind of the long-term end goal. And so, Jerome, when I see these things happen, and to everyone else, when I see these things happen where Foundation seems like they've dropped the ball, to me, that's like, oh, they dropped more gold that I can then pick up and sell, but I do have to like bend over and pick it up and whatever, mine it, make it into coins and the rest of it, or melt it down and make it into coins. So I think I look at it more as an opportunity than a failure on Foundation side, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
I 100% agree with the framing. Like, and this is the sort of way I operated before I worked at Foundation. It was like, oh, there's a hole in the docs here, and I asked an engineer a question, and I know the answer now, so I'm going to go write that doc. And if more people do that, our docs would be amazing. It does sort of come down to a matter of priorities. Like, yes, we could write that doc, but we could also be doing other things, like working with Deutsche Telekom. And those are trade-offs, and those are things where like we're uniquely positioned to be able to support some of those things. So we're going to prioritize that. That said, like I want better docs, and I will do anything I can to, I screenshotted Jerome's comment here because I'm going to like make a note of that for later and try to go add that documentation because it's an important thing to, illustrate. But if anyone ever wants to talk docs and like spend some time writing something up, I'm always here for it. I will show you how to do it. I will help you write it, whatever it takes.
Let me put something on top of that. There's a couple of comments in the chat about that. Jerome saying, how do I know, how can I make a how it works video when I don't know myself? So I think there's like, that is one of the obstacles, Jerome. It's not like gold just kind of falls out of their pocket and rolls directly into your wallet. Is that like it falls out and looks like shit, and you have to go down and smash it in little bits and melt it and make it into gold coins that you can then kind of sell on the open market. So there's a lot of the, I think, Daniel, do you want to say the FA? The fuck around and find out?
No, it's yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what he's saying. Like, I think, Nick, you're a very good example of these, right? People are like, oh, I don't know enough. Like, that's not an excuse. Just do things wrong, but do it, and then that's how you're going to learn. You're going to learn by burning stuff. I don't know how many times I burned capacitors and stuff like that, right?
For sure.
But like also like this call is a great example. It's like, wow, it's really dumb that this button doesn't exist. And it's like, oh, actually we did. We just didn't talk about it. And so now it's like that was a user request, right? And so we saw demand for it. And it's like, yeah, that should totally go in docs.
Another thing.
Good.
Sorry. Just not only the docs, right, Joey's. a lot of the code base that happens from Helium, it's open source. Everything is on GitHub. So a lot of times you want to do something that you think is best, just go, like, for example, the Explorer is open source. You can just go to the Explorer and can do some changes, and that changes, if it makes sense, people are going to approve. We at Hotspot, we did like I don't know how many, like pull requests already for stuff that Helium wanted to, an app and the Explorer, etc. Right? Everything that you think adds value, just go ahead and do it. Like, don't expect people to do it for you. Or if you don't know, just ask questions. I'm sure you're going to find someone that's willing to help.
As taking Explorer as an example, like we put special emphasis on making sure that you could pull down that repo and it would run with very little overhead, right? You don't have to like spin up databases and connect them and sort of all this other stuff. You just npm, was it yarn start, yarn run? I can't remember the exact command.
Yeah, exactly.
It's in the documentation though. It's all there.
Neil, anything? I see you nodding and shaking, nodding along. Anything else to add to that?
No, it's literally this community is stretched thin, doing everything as it is. Join in, literally, come and help. That's it. If you don't like a situation, change it. Lead the conversation. Don't just sit there going, "Oh, this is terrible. I can't do this." Do it.
100% agree. I'll put one last thing on that. I think maybe I shouldn't say this. Nah, fuck it. I think I've gotten more grants than anyone else. I don't think it's that many, and maybe not. Oh, nice, Joe. What do you got there? Fuck is going on in your background?
Now I've got coffee. But there was a
nice.
dog.
I thought someone's doing yoga in the background. And maybe not. I think I've got 4 or 5 grants. And so I'm like, I run business. I love small business. I just love all the mechanics of it. That may not be everyone on here. There are some people that don't really give a shit about it. And that's fine. And I think this is for what I think, Jerome, you're thinking, is that if you see a problem, I have, with one exception, never approached Helium Foundation and said, hey, I've got an idea for a solution. Here's what I'm going to do. I never say like, hey, just give me money and I'll tell you what I'm going to do later. I'll always come in and say like, hey, like for the People Counter project, which turned out to be a fucking failure on my side. So it's not like everything is a success, but I went to them and I said, hey, I talked to these park rangers. Here's what I need to buy these people counters. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's all the stuff you're going to get. And they made it super easy for me to do that. Now, sure, I've got an advantage because I'm a public figure and it's pretty clear like what I've been doing so far. But if the thing stopping you is the fact that you have to be able to make money for the time that you put in, strongly consider putting together a proposal for Helium Foundation and saying, look, this is what I'll do. These are the resources I need. Here's the stuff that I'll contribute. Don't expect them to do the entire thing for you. I put in a lot of time on the People Counter grant that was not paid time. In fact, in that grant, and you can see it, there's no money set aside for my time. It all went to devices, which was a mistake that I learned from for other grants. Is that like the resources are out there, but you do have to do your part of saying like, here's what I'll do. Here's what I want from you guys. So,
and to be fair, we've told you no many times as well, right?
That's right. There is more than one exception. I've come up with a couple things. You're like, no, I'm not fucking touching that.
Yeah. But you're making it happen as well.
Yeah.
The thing you touched on earlier too, it's like treating grants is the thing to sort of push that project over the line. And it's one of the things we really like to see. It's like, hey, we've got all these things. We're like ready to go. Got this guy that's super excited for this thing. Open source it, whatever it is, right? Yeah. And it's like, I just, I want you to back me on this. And that's usually an easier, I can't speak for that because I don't run the grants program at all.
Right.
So,
I would just like the exhortation is, hey, if that's the thing that's stopping you, don't, just realize that there are resources there. If you can articulate what you're doing and why it's helpful to the network and all of that ends up being true. Foundation is super good about that. And
one of these days I should publish my proposal for my Mappers grant because I have to hazard that it's one of the most fully detailed proposals that we've ever gotten. This was before I worked for Foundation again, right? But it's like, I was very passionate about the thing and I think that made it an easy sign off.
Yeah. Yep. And also say like, hey, this may not be the best way to do it. This is the way that Foundation is doing it. I like it. It works well for kind of my style. It seems to work well for Daniel and, for everyone on this call style. It may not be your style. And then if that's the case, like, just know that sometimes the world doesn't work the way you want it to. And I think this is good enough that it's fine and not worth kind of railing against the change. But yeah. Okay, so I wanted to put this next one in here just because I like stirring up trouble. But I know Max and I have talked about this. We've been hearing about it as we talk to basically Max Gold and I spend fucking 90% of our day on the phone, either with each other or with a couple hundred people across the deep in space. And what we heard a bunch of is there is a push to move. We talked about this with a buy on Deep in State to get rid of IoT and mobile tokens and go back to H&T only. I think that's pretty cool because that makes things simple. I'm sure there are significant downsides to that, and that will cost people significant money, depending on how much mobile or IoT they hold, and the redemption that goes back into that. But I also think it's a worthy conversation to at least to like throw a match on the fire, or throw a match on the gasoline, and be like, hey, I'll be right back. So I don't know, Daniel or Neil, Joe, you probably can't talk about it. If you guys have any thoughts on that, if it's a totally stupid idea, if it's worth pursuing, if it's something that you're like, no, I got other shit to do, or what?
I mean, looking at the Hotspotty like Discord community, we can see that this change actually created a lot of questions and people don't know what's happening. So it does make a lot of sense to give each like sub token its own like power, let's say, to evolve the way they want, right, in their own token. That I think that's one of the main ideas, among other. But I do agree that having one token, one agency, would make things much easier in terms of engineering. Maybe not so much engineering, because then you need to figure out how much agency each project is going to make, right? But everything else is going to be much more straightforward. Now we don't need to like convert IoT to agency to DC. I'm not sure exactly what's the best outcome of that. It's going to probably require a lot of engineering on the Solana side and like the foundation side to make that happen, if that vote's passed, if there is a heap for that even.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no
I
small
like the
thing.
idea. I like the idea. I just don't know enough what would be the problems that would cause.
Yeah. Neil, anything in there for you?
I mean, yeah, you need the governance separate, but do you need the token separate? I'm not sure. I know we obviously didn't do the redenomination because we did it on the sub-DAO level. So would we need to redo the redenomination again now on the main level? It was seen that mobile needed more token to make it sound like a bigger market. I think was the original idea behind the redenomination, that mobile needed more than the amount of tokens that was there. So, but the only reason we didn't do the redenomination is because it was done on the sub-DAO level. So there's that argument to come back about it. But yeah,
it's a big convo. I
I
just
mean,
wanted to put it out there.
it's horrible to say it, and I'm probably going to get some slack for this, but it really benefits mobile to go back to HNT, right? It doesn't benefit IoT that much either way.
Right.
The problem is
Yeah.
that they've been emitted mobile tokens for so long with no HNT backing because of this A-score stuff, that's why a lot of people kind of want to do it. And I can understand why, but I'm just not sure it's the right option. But
Right.
I'm not diehard either side.
Yeah, I do think that the hips are very complicated. It looks like a math a PhD thesis, like you need to really get your pen and paper and try to understand how it works. It could be more trivial, I guess.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the comments. Yeah, there is a ton of coding to do it. Derek, wasn't one of the reasons for the move was that Helium wanted to focus on the RF side and offload the blockchain stuff to Solana? Yeah, that was one of the reasons. It's a little bit separate from this discussion and idea, but certainly that was one of the reasons they went over to Solana to not deal with that. We don't need to go any deeper in that. I just wanted to bring it up so that folks had seen that stuff. We can talk about another contentious issue that Neil warned me would start a flame war, which is the proposal that I put forward as a HIP to shut down the Helium Foundation console, because it is from my perspective, running a tiny business. And you can see this on Dune. I think the Medio Scientific console burns something like 20 cents worth of DC a day. So it's not like I stand to gain a ton from that. And I think the Foundation console burns a lot more. But I also think that all of the customers who would be, quote, forced to come over to another LNS, I would hope it'd be meatspace, but it could be anything, if Foundation console shut down, I don't think they spend that much. So I don't think there's actually like that much money on the table. So this is not like that concerning to me, but I think it was like a fun HIP to propose. And then it was surprising how much Spice came with that.
I mean, I've got lots of opinions here. I'm happy to get into this.
Sure.
Uh, all right, so take this from sort of like high level, like how does the Helium network grow?
Yep.
And I guess my thesis in how we drive, you know, usage on the IoT network is through folks like you, Nick, who are going to go and run an LNS. They're going to build a business around it, and they're going to go market it to plumbers, or they're going to, lock down some big accounts or whatever. Those are multiplier effects on anything that I or the rest of the foundation team could ever do.
Yep.
We are not going to, multiply or, exponentially grow our usage by going and, doing grants or kicking off small projects.
Right.
Those are great. Those are opportunities for case studies and to sort of showcase the value in the Helium network, but they aren't the thing that like grows the chart
Right.
that we're working toward. And that's in the interest of everyone operating a hotspot, right? Like they want to see that data transfer happening through their gateway, whether it's through asset trackers driving through their town or, sensors on their trees or whatever it is.
Yep.
And so, where does Foundation Console play into that? Generally speaking, like Foundation Console is like filled this spot of being a opportunity for people to come in and see what the network does.
Yep.
It used to be the only one that did that because it was pretty frankly hard to run the entire system. Paul is the only person that's ever really ventured to go do it himself. And all the others had to work through Paul to figure out how to do it. And so now we're in a world where it's much easier to run these things, and like we want to see more of them out there. And one of the big impedances for that is people always look and say like, hey, why would I go run this as a business and try to charge, dollar per device per month or whatever it is they want to do,
Yep.
when somebody can just go and, throw $10 at a thing and be good for, 4 years because they're running 2 devices.
Right.
And so I think it's very important to ease off of that model. However, the one thing that I'm really cautious about here is effectively rugging people of their connectivity for their devices. LoRaWAN IoT is as a market is something where you should be able to set it and forget it. And if we go and just shut down the whatever thousands of devices that folks have plugged in, whether it's the proof of concept they set up for their local whatever, or just a mapper, right? Those are all things where there's an expectation of longevity, and so
it's gonna work.
Whatever path we take here, I have to keep both of those things in mind, and so those are the two sort of sides of the scale.
Yes.
Like, so we could do a hard shutdown, but then we kill like a ton of relationships on one side. We could run this thing forever, but then we compete with the marketplace. So that's the sort of proposal that I'll throw out there. And I love seeing this conversation. I think it's a great one to be having. We're definitely listening on the foundation side, and it's probably going to accelerate any sort of decision making that we might have here.
Take it, Neil. What you were super active in that convo for a while. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is right now is there's not a lot of volume on the DC burn. So what's been set as a price at the moment is not the eventual price, but it's the price that it costs to do business right now. So there's that kind of side that, yes, the figures are more, but that's what it's costing. There's a lot of out of hours support for this kind of stuff, and actually supporting the LNS that drive the price up. And there's been a few people say like, if it's going to 10x the price, well, why don't hotspots get more? But the point is that's the price that's paying for the packet. That's what it costs to actually use it. And Foundation has the console that's available that they see it at a much lower rate, so it's anti-competitive almost. But I feel like a little bit of everything's needed. Like we had a big discussion. The docs page lists all of the other LNS providers. There's no reference to Foundation on there. So really, they could be set off in the right way whilst Foundation console still exists. But it needs to kind of transition somehow, and how it happens, I'm not sure. Is now the right time? I don't think so. But I think, maybe something could be employed, like only allowing a device to exist on the Foundation console for 3 months. And after 3 months, it needs to be moved to a provider. Right. But then there's also integrations that allow them to one-click move to that provider. Make it really simple for them, and work on ways to decentralize the LNS providers. But I don't think it's the right time, because unfortunately Paul is just so knowledgeable. He is the only one helping everyone. So there's not much choice, and there's not much demand to drive that price down. So I just don't think it's the right time.
Yeah. Daniel, have you followed this? I haven't seen you in the chat over there.
No. I haven't followed that much. I do think, but I do think having a very, very straightforward and easy place that people can easily try things. But like you said, maybe it lasts after 1 month. It just like a LNS that restarts every week or something like that. That people don't use it actually as a service, but literally just as a trial, and then things clear up.
I think I'd be fine with that. So I'll kind of present the business side case. Is that I've got a cost, call it whatever X, to PayPal to run the LNS for me, and that cost is something I have to bear every month, whether everyone uses it or nobody uses it, right? So it's a fixed cost for me, and that is not an insignificant cost. So like I'm fine bearing it, because I think it's super fun to do this public thing, but I can't expect any other business to do the same thing. So there's that cost there. This whole argument is distorted quite a bit by some artificial limits that Paul is placing on me and anyone else who's using it in the same way, in that he requires that I sell DC at 10x the DC cost. So we're on Foundation, you spend 4 zeros and a $1 to buy a DC. On my console, you spend 3 zeros and a 1, so 10 times the DC cost. So it distorts the argument, which I think is really helpful, because it makes it clear. And I'll tell you this, if I'm running these things and running 20 cents through a day worth of DC, that means that I'm getting $2 a day. I'll tell you, 2 times 30 days in a month is $60. That does not cover the cost to pay Paul, right? There's nothing else in there. There's not my time. There's not Paul's time. There's like nothing else in there. Just that alone doesn't cover the cost. So if we're looking at this from the business perspective, and the alternative for you is to spend your DC at 10 times the price with me, or 1x the price with Foundation, there's no fucking reason for you to use my service. Other than that, you're like, okay, cool, I think what this guy's doing is cool. But for long term, you would be not a businessman if you were in, or businesswoman if you're in that. So I think that's kind of the business case side. I'm seeing a lot of other interesting arguments come out of it. So I think it's a really good conversation to have. And to be very clear, like, I don't really plan on running this as a giant business. Despite it looking like I have a dog in the fight, I don't really have a dog in this fight. But one of the things that came up was, and Joey, maybe you can speak to this, is Liam is talking about lowering the cost to run an LNS on Helium. So right now it's $900 to buy the license. Think of that as the OUI. And then there's whatever the cost is to hire Paul or to do it yourself. And I think Liam's point, and Neil, maybe you've talked about this too, but I'll let Joey hit it first, is it shouldn't be $900 to have a OUI.
Yeah, I'll set the stage here, and then I'll hand it off to Neil, because him and I have actually sort of chatted about this a little bit. But as far as the cost on the Helium side, an OUI is just a number. It's literally like a line in the database. There's effectively no cost. There's unlimited OUIs. The thing that the Helium Foundation pays for here is that we pay an annual membership to the LoRa Alliance for a Type 0 net ID, which is the largest allocation of address space that you can get for a LoRaWAN network. And then what we do with those OUIs is we split up that address space and share it with the community. And currently we are operating under sort of this legacy model of $100 per dev adder. And then we also just charge the $100 for the OUI. I'm not actually sure why that existed. And, from our side, we have this sort of ongoing cost. It's paid for by the foundation. It's not a decentralized thing, really. Like you could go get your own net ID and you'd be operating the same way as us. You could go set set up your own config service and do what we're doing. I'd actually be really curious to see somebody do that. Yeah, there's an argument to be made here that we should be doing this differently, whether it's, given out by the foundation or delegated as part of membership, or you have the same thing, but it's just a different cost. Anyway, at that point, I'll hand it to Neil, because there are a bunch of ideas here, and I think he's been continuing to think about it long past the conversation that him and I had.
Yeah, the OUI fees were from the days where you could burn data for way more than one in return, so that it was civil resistance to stop people just buying them and burning data. So we just never moved from that, and it's great. What we talked about earlier, it's like if anyone wants to throw all their time in it, do it. It would be so handy. It was spread so thin that no one's done it since. But I just think it's a little off whack. I think the OUI price is right, but I don't think the DevBlock price is right. People look at Chirpstack and go, wow, it could run on a Raspberry Pi. But that's one expensive Raspberry Pi at $1,000, in total, including buying a Raspberry Pi. So I think there needs to be some way that the foundation is allowed to, use use those address blocks for people that are in great projects that maybe aren't in the place to be able to afford it, to build out services. But at the same time, that it's just too expensive at the moment in my eyes. Like, you can actually go to the LoRaWAN Alliance, not become a member, and get a net ID, a very small one, for $500. So that's
how many devices does that get you, Neil? The $500.
I'm not sure.
And it's a recurring cost, right? $500 a year.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. I might do that. Liam Edwards, $500 for a Type 7 net ID. I might do that just to fuck around and see if I can find another better way to do this. I'm curious about the whole thing. Joey, you were looking to ask at that?
Well, so the dev address isn't necessarily tied to a unique number of devices unless you allocate on a one-to-one basis, because your LNS can multiplex multiple devices by figuring out the network session key and all of that through a MIC check. I won't get into all those details.
All right.
But
nerd stuff. Cool. Well, let's. Liam's saying 250,000. Cool. Well, this is something to explore off the show. We don't need to dive into fixing the entire problem right now. Let's finish up in the last couple minutes with something that's like, 50% tragic and 50% hilarious. Is that many of you who've been watching this for a long time will remember that Dave Akers used to come on here. He ran Helium Analytics for the first, I think he ran it for a year and a half. And that was the way that a lot of people accessed what was going on in the Helium world. This is back when Helium was running on its own blockchain. He did a fantastic job of putting up a bunch of numbers that really made it a lot easier for everyone, including the Nova side, the Helium Foundation side, and the community to watch what was going on. He has recently, and this is totally public, he's actually written blog posts about it. I don't know if the blog posts, the blog posts are in the description, so you can go read this. Been diagnosed with colon cancer. He's very pleased to have gotten 7 tattoos on the inside of his colon, so that he has tattoos, but he doesn't have to show them off. Now, if he was in America, we would need to do a fundraiser for him, because medical costs here are fucking insane. Luckily, he's in the UK, and the NHS, the National Health System there, seems to be covering it so far. But if he needs any help, you can rest assured that on this show, we will be conducting a Save Dave's Ass fundraiser to see what you can do to help him out. In the meantime, if you just have any kind of thoughts, well wishes, whatever, you can go on his blog post, write a nice comment, or he's very rarely on Discord. I think he's under Big Dave Akers on Discord, but go say hi to him, tell him you love him, tell him that, you're just thinking of him. I think that's always important for folks to hear. So. Yeah, we can have fun with a t-shirt anyway.
Oh, yeah. Got to be a can in it, right?
Yeah. Maybe we'll have like the can getting dragged out of his ass from his camera thing. I mean, he went into a lot of detail in the blog post, so I'm not putting anything in there that he hasn't already made public. But yeah, check out his blog post. I'll leave some comments on it, and then if we want to do something fun with a t-shirt that's a Save Dave's Ass fundraiser, I'd be happy to kind of run that thing.
That's awesome.
Love it. Yeah.
Cool. I think that, what do you got, Joey? Anything else?
Oh, no. Yeah. Send some love towards Dave. It's a big deal. Cool.
Ripping. Let's see. No Code Dad sitting in Alaska with 5 Bobcat 300s that will not onboard. No Code Dad, you look like a military dude. you should be able to figure this out, buddy. This is just like a military problem, and you can get through it. I think what has to happen for Bobcat is they have to add more onboards to the server. I believe they've done that. You can try that again. I would not say that Helium robbed so many people. I would say that is talking a ton of shit, and you should probably figure out what you're talking about before you talk that shit, which is to say that I think you're wrong, but I'm super happy to have you on the network and figuring it out. With that, fellas, fucking A, thanks for coming on. Super good show. I will see you guys next week. We're out.
Cheers. Bye.